Hi, welcome to Migrant Voices, a space where we center real stories of migration, identity, and belonging. My name is Dorothy, and I'm so honored that you have tuned in today. So, in this very first episode, I wanted to take a moment to introduce not just the podcast, but the reason behind its creation. So, why this podcast and why now? For far too long, migrant stories have either been oversimplified or, should I say, overlooked. We hear about migration in the news, we hear about migration policies, statistics, and migrants make headlines. But what we often don't hear is what it means to start over, what it means to learn a new language as a 30-year-old, what it means to miss family, what it means to raise children in a culture you are still learning to understand yourself, what it means to question your identity and then slowly begin to rebuild it. And that is what this podcast is about. I created Migrant Voices because I believe stories are powerful. Stories help us feel seen. They help us to connect with others. They help us to break down walls and structures. And as someone who has experienced migration personally and worked with diaspora communities, mentored young migrants, and also studied migration to some level, I know that there are voices that need to be heard. There are stories that need to be shared. With each episode of Migrant Voices, you'll hear stories that explore migration from different angles. You hear the beautiful, the difficult, the awkward, and the funny. Some episodes will feature personal stories from migrants themselves. In other episodes, we will bring second-generational youth, parents, researchers, or people working on the front lines of inclusion. Some of the topics we'll be discussing include what it feels like to arrive in a new country for the first time, the struggle of learning a new language, or even slowly forgetting your own mother tongue. We will also discuss diaspora parenting, faith, homemaking, memory, and my favorite topic, masculinity in migration. We are also going to look at ways in which love stretches across borders and cultures. So if you're a migrant trying to make sense of your place in the world, this podcast is for you. If you're part of the diaspora, born between cultures, negotiating identity, wondering where home really is, this podcast is really for you. If you work in education, policy, mental health, inclusion, or just want to understand migration beyond headlines, this podcast is for you. And if you simply believe in the power of storytelling to create empathy and change, I assure you that this podcast is for you. As for me, this podcast is deeply personal. In the subsequent episodes, I will be telling you more about my own migration journey. But I've moved, I've adapted, and I've restarted more than once. I've mentored people navigating identity, education, and purposes across continents. I've researched masculinity, faith, and belonging within West African migrant communities. And through it all, one thing has stayed with me, and that is the importance of telling our stories in our own words. And so Migrant Voices is my way of holding space for that. So if you have a story to tell, I would really love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on all our social media platforms or send us an email. We'd also like you to follow, share, leave a review, or send us a message about what you would love to hear more of. We are building a community of people that listen with empathy and share with courage. And so please join this community. Thank you for listening and for believing in the power of stories. This is Migrant Voices, where every journey tells a story. See you in our next episode.